Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time, we're traveling back to 19th century France, the birthplace of Spiritism, to explore the life of someone named Célina Japhet.
Oh, Célina Japhet.
Now, I gotta say, even I, as someone who's, pretty well-versed in Spiritism,
Right.
I wasn't super familiar with her.
Well, I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yep.
Even seasoned spiritists
Right.
might not recognize her name right away, but
It's-
she was a big part of those early days.
Yeah.
Kind of a controversial role, though, in the codification of Spiritism.
Oh, okay. Controversial. So we have some drama.
Oh, yeah. We've got some drama. We've got a whole mix of stuff to look at here, like
Okay.
historical accounts, journal entries, even a novel or two that don't exactly paint her in the best light.
Oh, juicy.
So yeah, buckle up. This deep dive is going to be a wild ride.
I am very intrigued already.
Good.
So where do we even begin with someone like this?
Well, let's start with her early life. Born Célina Eugénie Becquet in 1822, later adopted the name Japhet, which we'll get to in a bit.
Right.
But even as a young woman, Célina, she had some extraordinary abilities.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, there are these accounts of her experiencing somnambulism and magnetic trances.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just imagine.
Yeah.
She even reportedly cured her own paralysis using magnetic therapy.
What? No way.
Yeah.
That's wild. So she was already kind of, demonstrating these practices that were
Definitely.
gaining popularity at the time.
And she didn't just, dabble in it.
Okay.
She turned her experiences into a profession.
Really?
Became a consulting somnambulist.
Hmm.
Even advertised her services in the newspapers.
No way.
Oh, yeah. There's this ad in Le Cocher from back then. It's amazing.
What does it say?
Hold on, let me find it. Okay, here we go. It reads, Miss Célina, somnambulist, gives consultations on all kinds of subjects during the week from 3 to 6 o'clock, Sundays and holidays, from noon to 2 o'clock, and every day at the requested hours. It is enough to address her an oral or written question that is transmitted to her by her magnetizer so that she reaches the objective of her research. People who cannot come themselves can send someone in their place. Note, Miss Célina attends invitations at home.
Wow. I'm just trying to picture, someone casually dropping by for a somnambulism consultation,
Right.
Seems so out there to us now.
Right.
It really shows you how differently people viewed these phenomena back then.
Yeah, total glimpse into a world where the line between the seen and unseen was just, more fluid.
Yeah, totally.
And get this, her expertise, it wasn't just somnambulism.
Right.
She was also into cartomancy.
Cartomancy, like reading cards.
Exactly, using cards for divination. There's stuff about this in the Journal of Magnetism.
Wow, so she was like a multi-talented mystic.
She was.
Okay.
And good at it, too, apparently. There's this anecdote about her predicting a marriage for a young woman
Oh.
who was adamant about staying single. A year later, bam, prediction comes true.
Yeah. Wow. That's some good advertising right there.
Right.
But she wasn't just, fortune-telling. She got into some even more controversial stuff, right?
You're right. Through her mediumship, Célina was, among the first to receive communications about reincarnation.
Really? Reincarnation?
Yeah.
That's a big claim, especially in those early days of Spiritism.
It's huge. It would cause quite a stir.
I bet.
Which, this actually brings us to the story behind her adopted name, Japhet.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
So during a session, her magnetizer, a guy named Roustan,
Okay.
supposedly has this vision, right? A past life vision
Mm-hmm.
where he's Japhet, the son of Noah, from the Bible.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and Célina, she found this so compelling that she just adopted the name for herself.
That's a big commitment. It suggests, a strong belief in reincarnation.
For sure.
And maybe even, a desire to embody this past life identity.
Possibly.
It also makes me wonder about this Roustan guy.
Oh.
What was his deal? Was he just her magnetizer, or is there something more to their partnership?
That's a good question. And their relationship was definitely complex and played a big role in everything that happened with Célina.
Okay.
But before we go there, we got to talk about her meeting with Allan Kardec.
Yes. The man who basically becomes Spiritism, right?
Right.
So we have this, unconventional, gifted medium making a name for herself in Paris, and she's about to meet the person who will shape the whole future of Spiritism.
Exactly. It all starts in 1856, just a year before the Spirits book comes out.
Okay.
And, let me tell you, this meeting was a big deal for both of them.
So we go from consulting somnambulist to potentially influencing the foundation of a whole spiritual movement.
Yeah, you could say that.
Sounds like we're about to uncover a pretty pivotal chapter in Célina's life.
We are.
So Célina meets Kardec right before the Spirits book is published. What was her role in all that?
Well, it turns out she was pretty important in the revisions.
Revision.
Yeah, remember the first edition was already out?
Oh, right.
But the Spirits, they wanted some changes, some refinements.
Oh, yeah.
And Célina, through her trance states, she gave Kardec a lot of key information, a lot of insights.
So she was like a main source for those revisions, even though other mediums were involved too, like the Baudin sisters, right?
Oh, absolutely. Kardec even says this in the Review Spirit.
Okay, what does he say?
He writes, hold on. Later, the Spirits recommended its complete revision in private conversations to make all the additions and corrections that they deemed necessary. This essential part of the work was done with the help of Miss Japhet, who lent herself with the greatest goodwill and the most complete disinterest to all the demands of the Spirits, for it was they who set the days and hours for their lessons.
The most complete disinterest, huh?
Yeah.
It's interesting that he points that out almost like he's addressing, the controversies that would come later about Célina and her wanting to be paid for her services.
Yeah. Definitely something to think about, especially with Spiritism's emphasis on selfless service.
Right.
But hold on, there's another interesting thing here.
Okay.
It said that Kardec, he had the revelation of his own spiritist mission.
Oh, wow.
During his session with Célina.
Really? That's amazing.
Right. Talk about a life-changing moment.
Do we know anything about what happened during that session?
We do. It was on April 30th, 1856.
Okay.
And it's actually documented in Kardec's posthumous works.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Spirits, they were speaking through Célina, and they addressed Kardec, who was still going by Professor Reveil back then. And they said, "When the staff shall sound, thou shalt abandon it. Thou shalt only relieve thy fellow creatures. Thou shalt magnetize them individually in order to cure them. Then each one to the post which has been prepared for him, because all will be needed, for all will be demolished, at least temporarily. There will be no more religion, and one will be necessary, but true, grand, beautiful, and worthy of the Creator. Its first foundations have already been laid. As for thee, Reveil, thy man is there. To thee am the sword which does not wound but kills. Against everything that is, thou shalt be the first to come. He, Reveil, will come second. He is the workman who reconstructs what has been demolished."
Wow. That's a pretty direct message.
It is.
Imagine being told your life purpose like that.
I know. It really shows the impact Célina had on Kardec and the whole movement.
It does, yeah, but as with a lot of history, things aren't always so simple.
Right.
This is where Célina's story gets a little more complicated.
Yeah, it does.
Spiritism is all about selfless service, right?
Exactly.
But Célina, she kept offering her mediumship professionally.
She did.
So that's where the whole thing about her being accused of,
Exploitation.
Exploitation, yeah, that's where that comes in.
Yeah, and her magnetizer, Roustan, he was kind of in the middle of it all, too.
Oh, right. You mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, there were a lot of people saying he was pushing her to focus more on the money side of things.
That's interesting. And we can't forget about Champfleury's novel, The Masked Ball of Parisian Life, either.
Oh, right, the novel.
It's fiction, of course, but it paints a pretty unflattering picture of Célina and Roustan.
It does. Champfleury, his real name was Jules-François Félix Husson, by the way.
Okay.
He was a big deal in the realist movement. And in his book, he suggests that Célina and Roustan, they were tricking people to get money.
Really? Like what kind of tricks?
Well, for example, clients had to pay at least 5 francs for a consultation.
Oh, okay.
And then Roustan would kind of subtly manipulate them into revealing personal stuff.
Oh, I see.
Things Célina could then use in her readings.
That's pretty sneaky. It makes it sound like some kind of stage magic act or something.
Right. But it is fiction.
Sure.
So we can't take it as, the absolute truth.
But it does make you wonder.
It does.
About how genuine they were being.
Yeah.
And if they were intentionally deceiving people.
For sure.
And how does this fit in with the whole idea of selfless service in Spiritism?
Good question.
Kardec actually talks about this potential for exploitation in the Book of Mediums, doesn't he?
He does, he writes. As everything can become an object of exploitation, it would not be surprising if they also wanted to exploit the spirits. The question is to know how they would receive the thing, given that such speculation came to be attempted. We will say from the outset that nothing would lend itself better to charlatanism and cheating than such a trade. Far more numerous than the false somnambulists, which we already know, would be the false mediums, and this simple fact would constitute a well-founded reason for distrust. Disinterest, on the contrary, is the most concrete response that can be given to those who only see tricks in phenomena. There is no disinterested charlatanism. So what is the intention aimed at by those who would use deception without profit, especially when honor places them above all suspicion?
So we have Célina's big contributions to early Spiritism,
Yeah.
but also these questions about her motives, about how she was doing things.
Exactly.
And eventually this all leads to a falling out with Kardec, right?
But it did. By 1861, their relationship was pretty much over. Célina felt like she wasn't appreciated enough, like she wasn't compensated enough for her work on the Spirits book.
Oh.
And all those accusations against her, they just fueled her resentment towards Kardec.
That makes sense. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it was, and things escalated pretty quickly.
What happened? Did she confront Kardec?
She did, and get this, she did it publicly.
What?
Yeah, Célina went to the Review Spiritualist,
The rival publication.
the rival publication to Kardec's Review Spirit.
Wow. Airing your dirty laundry like
I know, right? Bold move.
What did she say?
In her statement, it was published in November of 1861.
Okay.
She basically said she wanted legitimate moral and material compensation from Kardec.
So she's directly contradicting this whole idea of disinterest that Kardec was all about.
Totally.
How did people react to this, to her going public like that?
It caused a huge stir in the Spiritist community,
I'd bet.
and it basically put Célina in direct opposition to Kardec. She sided with the group behind the Review Spiritualist.
Oh, wow. And that's the group that was against reincarnation, right?
Exactly. The very concept that Célina had helped bring to light earlier on.
That's so interesting. Is like her focus shifted from like disagreements about beliefs to this feeling of personal injustice of not being recognized.
Totally. And this break with Kardec, it really was a turning point for her.
Did this mean she disappeared from the scene?
Pretty much, she kept practicing mediumship, but she wasn't in the spotlight anymore.
Okay.
But she did give this really revealing interview a few years later.
Oh.
To who? To Alexander Aksakov, a Russian spiritualist researcher.
Okay.
It was in 1873, and it was published in The Spiritualist in 1875.
Wow. So even years later, she was still thinking about all of this.
It seems so.
About her experiences and her role in the Spirits book.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that.
So what did she have to say in this interview? I'm really curious now.
Well, we should dive into that next time.
Okay, I'm ready when you are. So we left off with Célina doing this interview years after the whole falling out with Kardec. What did she say?
Well, she really let loose.
Oh.
In this interview with Aksakov, she went back to those claims about not being recognized for her contributions to the Spirits book.
Right.
Even accused Kardec of basically stealing her manuscripts.
Wow, really?
Yeah, Aksakov quotes her as saying, Kardec collated the materials by a series of questions, arranged the whole in systematized form, and published the Spirits book without ever having mentioned the name of Madame C. Japhet, though 3/4 of this book were given through her mediumship. The remainder was obtained from communications through Madame Baudin, who belonged to another Spiritist circle. She is not mentioned save on the last page of the first number of the Review Spirit, where, in consequence of the number of reproaches which were addressed to him, he then makes a brief mention of her.
Wow. She was still pretty upset, even after all this time.
Yeah, that resentment, it definitely stuck with her.
So how did Kardec's supporters respond to these accusations?
Well, a few people came to his defense.
Okay.
Anna Blackwell, she was the first to translate Kardec's work into English.
Okay.
She argued that reincarnation wasn't a new idea. A lot of writers had talked about it before.
Right.
Her point was that Kardec was more of a compiler, bringing all these different ideas together. He wasn't trying to claim he came up with it all himself.
So Blackwell was basically saying, look, Kardec was just presenting a framework.
Exactly.
Based on lots of sources. And yeah, one of those sources was Célina.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pierre-Gaëtan Lamerie. He also chimed in.
Oh, right. He was the one who kind of took over after Kardec died.
Yeah, he led the group. They carried on Kardec's work.
Yeah.
And he basically questioned why Célina should get more credit than other mediums.
Interesting.
I mean, lots of people contributed to the Spirits book, right?
Sure.
He argued that if you tried to acknowledge everyone,
Yep.
it would be a mess, and it would take away from the collaborative spirit of the whole thing.
I see his point. So we have two very different perspectives here.
For sure.
A very complex situation.
Totally.
What happened to Célina after all this drama?
Well, she kept advertising her services as a consulting somnambulist for a few more years.
Okay.
But eventually she kind of faded from the public eye. Records show that she died in Paris on April 30th, 1884. She was 62.
It's kind of a sad ending.
It is, yeah.
A life that started with so much potential and influence.
Right.
So what can we learn from Célina Japhet?
Where I think her story shows us just how complicated those early days of Spiritism were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were still figuring things out, defining the boundaries of this new field.
Yeah, it was all so new.
And even though her motivations are still up for debate,
Right.
we can't ignore how much she contributed, especially to the Spirits book.
It reminds us that history isn't always black and white.
It's not.
You often find a mix of selflessness and ambition in the people who start these new movements.
Absolutely.
And Célina's story really makes you think about the connection between mediumship, personal gain, and wanting spiritual knowledge.
It does.
It asks questions that are still relevant for us today.
Absolutely. It makes us think about finding that balance between service and self-interest.
Right.
It's about understanding what drives people.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider.
It is.
Well, that was Célina Japhet.
A fascinating figure, for sure.
Definitely leaves us with some things to think about.
I think so, too.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into all those mysteries out there.